Thank you, Dr. Salim, for the kind invitation. So, strabismus can be a symptom of diverse disorders, and decision of neuroimaging can play a pivotal role in reaching out to the correct diagnosis and formulating a correct treatment, tailored treatment plan. And here we will discuss when, why, and which imaging has to be ordered. So there are suspicious symptoms that warrant further imaging in strabismus. And this,
Shweta, you have to share your screen. We cannot see your slides. Now we can see your slides. Thank you.
Okay. So there could be suspicious symptoms like headache, sudden onset strabismus, unexplained visual loss, diplopia, loss of visual field, any neurological sign, eye pain, trauma. Then there could be suspicious sign which could warrant further imaging in strabismus like decreased visual acuity, afferent pupillary defect, any anisocoria, light near dissociation, visual field defect, papilledema, optic atrophy, nystagmus, cranial nerve palsy, any neurological signs, variability, and recurrence. So when do you order CT? Generally, CT is ordered to see intraosseous segment of cranial nerves and skull base foramina. It helps also in evaluation of fractures, muscle entrapment, presence of orbital mass, subarachnoid hemorrhage, calcification in aneurysms. Then CT angiography is equal to digital subtraction angiography in detecting intracranial aneurysms. Now, when do you order MRI? It should be ordered when intracranial pathologies are suspected in strabismus. It's a gold standard for studying cranial nerves, and the best sequences of cistern segment of cranial nerves is seen on steady state free processing images. Then MRI is also helpful in detecting the vascular flow patterns, delineating inflammation, demyelination, ischemic infarction, abscess, infiltration, tumor. And diffusion weighted images can demonstrate small and acute infarct, and MRI orbit can reveal lesions associated with extraocular muscles. So I will be discussing different case scenarios to start with cranial mononeuropathy. So the indication for neuroimaging in cranial mononeuropathy is younger than 50 with an acute onset cranial nerve palsy, over 50 without any vasculopathic risk factors like diabetes, hypertension, but a history of any type of cancer, multiple cranial neuropathies, evidence of additional neurologic dysfunction, any pupillar involving palsy, and isolated palsy that has progressed over a period of time. To begin with, a 52-year-old male presented with diplopia and ptosis with a sudden onset thunderclap headache with periorbital pain and loss of consciousness. On examination, he had right-sided third nerve palsy. Since the pupil was involved, so urgent MRI with MRA was ordered, and it revealed a saccular posterior communicating artery aneurysm, so which was impinging on the basilar part of third nerve. So the patient was referred to neurosurgery, and balloon-assisted coiling of the aneurysm was done, and the patient recovered. Now, case 2, a 62-year-old male presented with severe headache followed by slurring of speech associated with drooping of eyelid along with right-sided hemiplegia, which corroborated with the clinical finding of Weber syndrome. Imaging also corroborated the clinical findings where MRI showed infarct in the midbrain because of the occluded left vertebral artery. Unlike adults, all children presenting with third cranial palsy should undergo MRI regardless of pupillary involvement. Now consider this case. A 14-year-old male boy presented with both high ptosis with adduction deficit with a 10 days history. So it was a case of bilateral nuclear third nerve, and the imaging was ordered. MRI brain revealed a contrast enhancing lesion in the midbrain, which was and serum ELISA for neurocystic circus antigen was positive. So the patient was given a course of oral steroids and albendazole, to which he responded. Now, another example, a 12-year-old boy presented with a recurrent history of right third nerve palsy. On imaging, it showed right third nerve schwannoma. This the recurrent or waxing waning type was because of the cystic changes in the schwannoma, which was occurring over a period of time and resolved with steroid. Now, fourth nerve palsies with a subacute presentation and large fusional vertical amplitudes are likely long-standing congenital. They are often decompensated presents with diplopia, and they do not require imaging. Unfortunately, isolated paralysis of trochlear nerve has no neurologic localizing value, and therefore visualization of complete course of nerves is often indicated, but only 4.3% of patients have lesions detected on MRI. So in a case of SOP, imaging is indicated in a case of trauma where hemorrhage could be detected on the imaging and the dorsal midbrain. Then microvascular lesions can also be seen on MRI. Tumors can also be rarely seen on MRI. Now, coming to another case, 40-year-old male presented with inability to move left eye outward. He had history of headache since 4 weeks. Examination revealed a right-sided sixth nerve palsy. Imaging revealed a diffuse plaque-like thickening of left tentorium, and which was suggestive of granulomatous inflammatory changes consistent with the finding of hypertrophic pachymeningitis, which was impinging, which was causing basilar sixth nerve palsy. Further investigations revealed a high level of ACE. CCT chest revealed hilar lymphadenopathy, and its biopsy revealed non-caseating granuloma. So it was a sarcoid-related pachymeningitis. Now, it is also, neuroimaging is quite helpful in multiple cranial neuropathies. It helps you localize where is the lesion. Like a 34-year-old boy patient presented with sudden onset redness and pain in one eye, decreased sensation over right side of face associated with proptosis. On examination, he had pulsatile exophthalmos, chemosis, dilated episcleral vessels, ophthalmoplegia involving pupil. Urgent MRI with angiography was done. MRI revealed enlarged superior ophthalmic vein. The patient was referred to neurosurgery in view of keratocavernous fistula. So it helps in diagnosing the urgent cases and further management. Now, role of imaging in neuropathic or complex strabismus. There is a role of dynamic imaging. We do a dynamic imaging where we study the cross-sectional area of the muscle in different gazes, and where the increase in cross-sectional area tells you the pathology. Like here in this case, in the dextro gaze, both the LR is contracting and there is increase in cross-sectional area of the muscle, which is showing synergistic divergence. And here in the levo gaze, inferior rectus is contracting in the levo gaze. So here we have published this paper describing this entity as synergistic innervational downshoot. And this even cis sequences shows hypoplastic third nerve. So dynamic imaging can help you localize the misinnervation problem in congenital cranial disinnervation disorder and help you plan the case appropriately so that the misinnervated muscle can be transposed accordingly to get better results. Now, consider this example case. 6-year-old girl presented with complaint of absent horizontal eye movement since birth. There was progressive scoliosis for the past 1 year. Now, imaging showed split pons sign, butterfly-shaped medulla, pons atrophy. So it was a consistent MRI showed scoliosis. So it was neuroimaging confirmed the diagnosis of horizontal gaze palsy with progressive scoliosis, and this the diagnosis helped in early rehabilitation of the child and proper counseling for the future pregnancies. Now, role of imaging in Pulley disorders. This 10-year-old boy presented with axial myopia of -20 diopters, and he presented with esotropia and hypotropia. There was limited abduction and elevation. And so the imaging of the muscle on of MRI orbit was done, and it revealed inferiorization of lateral rectus and medialization of superior rectus, thereby confirming the finding of myopic strabismus fixus, in which there is involutional change in the connective tissue band between the lateral rectus and superior rectus, where it could be elongated or ruptured. And this helps in knowing the pathology and planning accordingly, and loop myopexy can be done in such cases. Then role of muscle imaging. Again, this is a picture showing a female, 16-year-old female with large exotropia and adduction deficit. MRI orbit showed hypoplastic medial rectus, but when you do an axial scan, you see there is a absence of global fibers. So now you suspect that muscle could be absent intraoperatively, and that was the case here. We found it intraoperative, and things could be planned pre-hand. So it helps in early diagnosis, preoperative, early planning, prevent intraoperative surprise, and avoid complications, resulting in better outcomes. Then there is role of muscle imaging in strabismus with craniostosis. Now, syndromic craniostosis should often be imaged when it presents with large patterns or with duction deficit, because you might find absent muscle in such cases. Then there is a role of imaging in lost muscle, and you could very well localize the muscle. Where is the muscle exactly located, so that you can prehand whether you will be able to retrieve the muscle or not. Now, strabismus with optic nerve pathology. Here is a case, 8-year-old boy presented with low vision exotropia and nystagmus. He had history of global developmental delay. So here it is showing exotropia with head posture, and there was a seesaw nystagmus, and there was a double ring sign on fundus. So neuroimaging showed bilateral optic nerve hypoplegia, absent septum pellucidum. So it was a consistent finding of septo-optic dysplasias, and it should be remembered that this diagnosis, optic nerve hypoplegia, can be related with CNS-related abnormalities, and misdiagnosis of septo-optic dysplasia may be life-threatening, especially in the presence of pituitary hormone abnormalities that can occur at any age, and it is important to recognize to avoid acute decompensation. And this patient was referred to pediatrics. Role of imaging in strabismus with developmental delay. Periventricular leukomalacia is often seen in premature children who often presents with strabismus. And in 2002, a study showed that strabismus and nystagmus can be only symptom presenting with periventricular leukomalacia. So the imaging findings can very well detect periventricular leukomalacia. In severe cases, it could be cystic encephalomalacia, passive ventriculomegaly, thin corpus callosum, even sometimes general matrix bleed. So this helps you in knowing the condition of the child, and the patient can be referred accordingly to the pediatrics, and physiotherapy and visual therapy can be started as soon as possible. Then role of imaging in strabismus with orbital pathologies. Now this year, 14-year-old female presented with acute diplopia on side gazes, and you could see here there was a right eye abduction limitation and with narrowing of palpebral fissure, whereas there was widening of palpebral fissure along with adduction deficit in levo version. So it was an inverse Duan sign. There was redness around the area of medial rectus. So we suspected the restrictive pathology, and imaging was done, and it revealed right eye medial rectus cysticercus, and the patient was managed accordingly. So imaging can also help in knowing the orbital pathologies like thyroid and other inflammatory disorders, orbital tumors, etc. Then role of imaging in acute concomitant strabismus. There are various literature available which shows that acute onset esotropia can present with tumors, and one should know when to order a neuroimaging in case of acute onset esotropia. When there is absence of expected findings like hypermetropia, accommodative component in esotropia, older age, acute onset with diplopia with fusion potential, neurological sign, in the presence of atypical features or any other neurological signs at onset, and large esodiviation or recurrence. Consider this example, a 7-year-old female presented with acute onset ESO. There was not much difference with the small hypermetropia which she had. Fundus revealed papilledema on both eyes. So neuroimaging was ordered, and it showed perioptic nerve sheath distension and vertical tortuosity of optic nerve, which was consistent with the finding of BIH. So we tried finding out the cause of BIH, and it came out to be the craniosynostosis, as because of the abnormal shape of her skull, and it showed synostosis of sagittal and lambdoid suture along with the synostosis of metopic sutures. So she was further managed in pediatric departments. So know when to say no to imaging. You should know if a patient presents with diplopia with a prior history of any ophthalmic surgery. Like see this case. This patient presented with diplopia, acute onset diplopia in the dextro version, and if you could see, this patient had left eye adduction deficit in dextro version along with a narrowing of the palpebral fissure, and you could see there is narrowing and enophthalmos, whereas in dextro version, in the levo version, there is widening of the palpebral fissure. So we were suspecting a restrictive pathology. On asking history regarding any ophthalmic surgery, patient told that there was a pterygium surgery which happened 6 months back, and there was a fibrotic band on the lateral side which explained his condition. So here neuroimaging was not indicated. Now, old traumatic third nerve palsy with aberrant regeneration need not imaging. Then history of long-standing stable strabismus. Then older patients with divergence paralysis, ESO, where patients present with small diplopia on the lateral sides, and this is because of the sagging eye syndrome, age-related. So to conclude, knowing when you should image and when you should hold back is important. Decision to choose to image a patient with strabismus can be life-saving decision. After a detailed history, a complete ophthalmic examination, special attention to the pupillary examination, sensoromotor examination, and alignment in multiple gazes along with versions and ductions. Anatomy of cranial nerves is complex and its knowledge is crucial. It is important to recognize and anticipate the neurological findings, and imaging can give a clue. Imaging also can help you make a diagnosis, but it can also help you rule out other dangerous conditions in the differential and help lay out a surgical plan. Thank you.